John Limbert, in your book, Negotiating with Iran, Wrestling the Ghosts of History, you talk about 4 crises in Iranian history, U.S.-Iranian history. What are those 4 crises?
Well, the 4 go back. 2 of them were actually pre-revolution, 2 post-revolution. The first was the crisis over the northwest Iranian area of Azerbaijan after World War II. Many people believe that is where the Cold War actually started. Second was the oil nationalization crisis of 1951 and 1953, in which the Iranians attempted to assert control over their major economic resource. In the end, the effort was frustrated in part because of a CIA-sponsored coup against the Iranian nationalist leader. The second 2 occurred after the Islamic Revolution. The first was something I was involved in personally, which was the hostage crisis from 1979 until 1981. And the second was the crisis involving the hostages, American and others, held in Lebanon during the 1980s, and a part of that, an incident that touched this institution here at the Naval Academy, what is commonly known as Iran Gate or Iran-Contra.
Well, let's go back to the first one. You say the Cold War is often thought to have begun in Azerbaijan and the Azerbaijan crisis. What do you mean by that?
Of course, what had happened was that the Allies, the British and the Russians, in September of '41 had occupied Iran as a supply line to the Soviet Union, which was fighting for its life against Nazi Germany. The U.S. joined that occupation after the U.S. joined the war. After the war, the Russians did not leave as they had agreed to do, and instead set up a separatist movement in the northwest, which first demanded autonomy from Iran. That crisis was the first item on the docket of the newly formed United Nations, and of the first 5 resolutions of the UN Security Council, beginning in January 1946. 3 of those 5 involved Iran and Azerbaijan.
What role did the CIA play in Iran in the 1950s?
Well, Peter, it's a good question. I don't have any details. Many Iranian friends of mine think I know more than I do about the operations of the CIA. People will argue about this endlessly. What we do know is that in early 1953, President Eisenhower, inheriting a difficult situation from President Truman, gave the order to plan an operation inside Iran, or gave an order to the CIA, plan an operation to bring down Prime Minister Mossadegh and to replace him with someone who believed to be more in accordance with our interests.
So what was the final outcome? Did the Prime Minister get replaced? Did the Shah come on the throne at that time? How did that happen?
It's a fascinating story. The Shah, in fact, was reluctant to move against Mossadegh. He was presented with a plan to replace Prime Minister Mossadegh with a military man by the name of Fazlullah Zahidi. The Shah did not like Zahidi very much and didn't want to see a military man. I mean, thinking he might be jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. He was persuaded. There are stories that the way he was persuaded was that he was told, this is going ahead with or without you. That Mossadegh will be replaced by Zahedi. If it goes with you, so much the better. If it does not, then you will be looking for a job elsewhere. And he eventually was persuaded to go along with it.
So, Professor Limbert, when you look at that crisis, before we move on to the other two, when you look at that crisis, what kind of attitude did that help to develop among the Iranians toward the West?
Specifically toward the United States. The Iranians traditionally had a very pessimistic view toward the British. The British, after all, had participated in dividing the country into spheres of influence in the early 20th century. They were part of the race for resources within Iran. They took a very lucrative oil concession back in the early 20th century, essentially bought it for nothing, and continued their control over Iran's essentially one resource that it had, and dictated terms to the Iranians. For example, back in the 30s, the Iranians said, well, you know, we should renegotiate this, and we want to take a look at the books of this company which operates here in Iran. And the British said, oh, no, you can't do that. That's proprietary information. We will decide the accounting. We will do the accounting, and we will give you a check for an amount that we decide is due to you. This was the situation. Toward the United States, up till that time, was seen in Iran as a friend of the national movement. The Iranian nationalism, you could say, or the struggle for Iranians to become masters in their own house, to get control of their own destiny, started perhaps late in the 19th century, early in the 20th century. And although the United States was not a big player in the struggle, when we did play, we were usually on the right side. There's several very famous incidents when a young American teacher by the name of Howard Baskerville was killed fighting on the side of the Constitutionalists. This was 1909. In 1910, 1911, President Taft sent Morgan Schuster and a Treasury team to help the Constitutionalists get control of the budget, get control of the country's finances, because they knew without that they were nothing, and they had no chance. That was also frustrated. The U.S. was seen as playing a very positive role in the Azerbaijan crisis, in helping Iran to restore its sovereignty and territorial integrity. 1953 and what happened with the coup, unfortunately, changed all that. One can argue why that happened, how that happened, were there reasons for it, but at that point, basically, the U.S. Changed its role in the Iranian view from being a friend and supporter of Iranian nationalism to being something of the new Great Britain.
In negotiating with Iran, you talk about misjudgments on both sides when it comes to the 1979 hostage crisis. What are some of those misjudgments?
Well, there were several. One, perhaps on our side, was the idea that the United States and Iran could, in fact, after this revolution, rebuild some kind of a relationship. On our side, based on anti-communist and anti-Soviet imperatives, and that Iran's traditional dislike of communism and of Russian expansion would create a set of interests allowing for at least a certain degree of cooperation. Not what had happened under the Shah, but at least a new basis for engagement. In that case, I think we misread what in fact